Please tell me you have something, anything, about the legend of the Weeping Lighthouse." The words tumbled out in a breathless rush as the bell above the bookshop door chimed frantically. Leon looked up from the stack of poetry books he'd been carefully alphabetizing, his hands freezing mid-motion. Standing in the doorway was a woman completely drenched from the sudden rainstorm, water dripping from her dark curls onto the worn wooden floor, her eyes desperately scanning the shelves. The what?" Leon stammered, his usual shyness creeping up his neck like a warm blush. "The Weeping Lighthouse. The old legend about the lighthouse keeper's daughter who cried so many tears that they say her ghost still makes the lighthouse light flicker." She stepped further inside, wringing water from her jacket sleeve. "I've asked everyone in this town, and they all said, 'Go ask Leon at the bookshop. If anyone knows the old stories, it's him.'" Leon's heart hammered against his ribs. People had said his name to this beautiful stranger, this confident, passionate woman who looked like she'd walked straight out of one of the adventure novels he loved to read. Yes, I know the story. I have books about it, the legend." "Thank goodness." She laughed, and the sound filled the quiet bookshop like music. "I thought I'd have to swim back to the mainland empty-handed. I'm Ginevra, by the way. Ginevra Rossi." "Leone," he managed, then realized he should say more. "Leone Marchetti. This is my family's shop. Well, my grandmother's really, but I run it now." The rain pounded against the shop windows as Leon led Ginevra through the maze of bookshelves, acutely aware of every creaking floorboard beneath his feet. He'd walked this path thousands of times, but now each step felt significant, important. His bookshop had always been his safe haven, a place where he could hide from the world behind stories and poetry. But suddenly, with Ginevra following close behind, the familiar shelves seemed to glow with new possibility. "Here," Leon said softly, pulling out a leather-bound volume from a middle shelf. "This one has the most complete version of the Weeping Lighthouse legend. The author interviewed 12 different families who've lived in this town for generations." Ginevra's eyes lit up as she took the book, her fingers tracing the embossed title with reverence. This is perfect. Absolutely perfect." She opened to a random page and began reading, her lips moving slightly with the words. Leon found himself staring, then quickly looked away, pretending to straighten nearby books that didn't need straightening. "Are you a historian?" Leon asked, trying to sound casual. "A travel writer," Ginevra replied, not looking up from the book. "I go to small towns and find their hidden stories, the legends tourists never hear about, the traditions that only locals know. My articles help people discover places they'd never think to visit." She finally looked up, meeting Leon's eyes with such directness that he nearly forgot to breathe. "But I have to admit, this town is special. I've been here 3 days, and already I feel like I've found 100 stories worth telling." "3 days?" Leon echoed. "You've only been here 3 days. Is that surprising? It's just, you seem like you already know this place, the way you talk about it." Leon surprised himself with his own honesty. Usually, he could barely string 2 sentences together with strangers, but something about Ginevra made the words flow easier. Ginevra smiled, a softer expression than her earlier enthusiasm. "I've learned that places reveal themselves to people who really want to listen. You just have to pay attention." She gestured around the bookshop. "Like this place. I bet you could tell me stories about every book in here, couldn't you?" "Not every book," Leon said, then added with a small smile. "But most of them." "See? That's the kind of detail that makes a place magical. Ginevra tucked a wet curl behind her ear. Most people just see a bookshop. But there's more here, isn't there? There's history. There's love. There's... A crack of thunder shook the windows, making them both jump. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof like thousands of impatient fingers. "Oh no," Ginevra groaned, looking toward the door. "I need to get back to my hotel. I left all my notes there, and I have to organize them before I forget." "You can't go out in this," Leon interrupted, shocking himself with his boldness. "The streets flood when it rains this hard. The old drainage system can't handle it. You'd be walking through knee-deep water in 5 minutes." Ginevra looked at him, then at the torrential rain outside, then back at him. "How long does it usually last? Could be 10 minutes, could be 2 hours. There's no way to know." Leon hesitated, then heard his grandmother's voice in his head, telling him to be a gentleman. "You're welcome to wait here. I could make tea, and if you want, I could show you more books about local legends." The smile that spread across Ginevra's face made Leon's stomach flip. "I would love that. Both the tea and the books." As Leon busied himself in the tiny back room that served as a kitchen, heating water in an old copper kettle, he couldn't believe what was happening. A beautiful woman was in his bookshop, waiting for him to bring her tea, wanting to talk about stories and legends. These things didn't happen to Leon Marchetti, the shy bookseller who'd barely left his hometown in 10 years. He returned with 2 mismatched teacups, one with painted violets, one with a chipped gold rim, and found Ginevra perched on the old reading chair near the window, 3 books already stacked beside her. She'd removed her wet jacket and draped it over a nearby shelf to dry. Her dress, a simple blue cotton thing, was still damp, but she didn't seem to mind. "I hope you like chamomile," Leon said, offering her the violet cup. "It's all we have." "It's perfect." Ginevra wrapped her hands around the warm cup and inhaled deeply. "So, Leon Marchetti, you said you run this shop now. Does that mean you've lived here your whole life?" Leon settled into the chair opposite her, grateful for the comfortable distance. "Yes. Born upstairs, actually. This building has been in my family for 4 generations. My great-great-grandfather started the bookshop in 1897. 1897, Ginevra repeated, wonder in her voice. "That's incredible. Do you have records from back then?" "Some. My grandmother keeps journals going back to her mother's time. Stories about which books people bought, what events happened in town, even little notes about the weather." Leon felt himself relaxing as he talked about familiar things. She used to say that a bookshop is really a diary of a town's soul. Ginevra set down her teacup and pulled out a small notebook from her bag. "Can I write that down? That's beautiful." "You want to write about our bookshop?" "I want to write about everything in this town," Ginevra said, scribbling rapidly. "The bookshop, the lighthouse, the people, the legends. I want people reading my article to feel like they're walking these streets, smelling the sea air, hearing the stories." She looked up at him. "Would you mind if I interviewed you properly? About the bookshop, the town, the legends you know?" Leon's immediate instinct was to say no, to retreat into his shell, to mumble something about being too busy. But Ginevra's eyes held such genuine interest, such warmth, that he found himself nodding instead. "Okay, yes, I could do that." For the next hour, as the rain continued its assault on the town, Leon and Ginevra talked. She asked him about his favorite local legends, and he told her about the Singing Caves, where sailors claimed to hear voices in the wind, about the ancient olive tree that supposedly never stopped bearing fruit, about the Festival of Stars that happened every August when the whole town gathered on the beach. But somewhere along the way, the interview stopped feeling like an interview. Ginevra shared her own stories, growing up in Milan, but always feeling like she didn't quite fit. Discovering her love of writing when a teacher praised her essay about her grandmother's village, the moment she decided to chase stories instead of staying in one place. "Don't you get lonely?" Leone asked. "Always traveling? Never settling down?" Ginevra considered the question carefully. "Sometimes, but then I think about all the people I meet, all the stories I collect, and it feels worth it. Though I have to admit," she paused, looking around the cozy bookshop, "sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have a place like this. A home that's been loved for generations." "It's not as glamorous as traveling the world," Leone said, with a self-deprecating smile. "Maybe not glamorous, but it's real. It's rooted." Ginevra stood and walked to a shelf of poetry books, running her finger along the spines. "Oh, you have Neruda, in the original Spanish." Leone's eyebrows shot up. "You read Spanish? And French and a bit of Portuguese. It helps with the job." She pulled out the Neruda collection. But this, 20 love poems and a song of despair, this was the first poetry book I ever loved. I read it when I was 16, and it made me understand that words could hold entire universes. "I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees," Leone quoted softly. Ginevra turned to stare at him. "You know Neruda. Poetry is—" Leone stopped, feeling vulnerable. "It's the only way I know how to understand feelings sometimes. Stories are safe. Poetry is brave." Something shifted in the air between them. The bookshop seemed smaller suddenly, warmer. Ginevra held his gaze for a long moment, and Leone felt like she was reading him, the way she'd read that leather-bound book of legends. Carefully, thoroughly, seeing things he'd never meant to show. "Recite me your favorite line," Ginevra said quietly. "From any poem." Leone's mind raced through thousands of verses he'd memorized over the years. But the one that came to his lips was from Neruda again. "I love you without knowing how, or when, or from where." The words hung in the air like a confession. Leone immediately regretted saying them. Too intimate, too honest. But Ginevra smiled. Not her earlier bright smile, but something softer, more private. "That's mine too," she whispered. The rain began to slow, the drumming on the roof softening to a gentle patter. Neither of them moved to acknowledge it. Instead, Ginevra returned to her chair, and they fell into another conversation, this time about poetry, about Pablo Neruda and Rumi, about Emily Dickinson and Dante, about whether love poems were harder to write than poems about loss. "I think they're the same thing," Leone found himself saying, surprising himself with his boldness. "Love poems are always a little bit about loss, because when you love something, you're aware it could end. That's what makes it precious." Ginevra looked at him like he'd said something profound. "You should write that down. That's the kind of insight people spend their whole lives trying to articulate." "I'm just a bookseller," Leone said, embarrassed. "You're not just anything," Ginevra replied firmly. "You're someone who understands stories and poetry and the human heart. Don't diminish that." Leone didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. But he felt something warm spreading in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years, the sensation of being truly seen. When the rain finally stopped, Ginevra stood reluctantly. "I should get back before it starts again. My hotel is a 15-minute walk from here." "The streets will still be wet," Leone warned, also standing. "Watch out for the cobblestones near the fountain. They get slippery." "I will." Ginevra gathered her dry jacket. and the books Leon had insisted she borrow. As she reached the door, she turned back. "Thank you, Leon, for the tea and the stories and the poetry. Today was," she searched for the right word, "unexpected in the best possible way." "You could come back," Leon blurted out before he could stop himself. "Tomorrow, if you want. I could show you more books, or we could just talk about anything." Ginevra's smile could have lit up the entire bookshop. "I would really like that." After she left, Leon stood motionless for several minutes, staring at the door where she'd been. Then he noticed something on the floor near the reading chair. A small leather notebook, its pages filled with handwriting and sketches. Ginevra's notebook. She must have dropped it when she gathered her things. Leon picked it up, intending to just hold it until tomorrow. But the notebook had fallen open, and he couldn't help but see the sketch on the exposed page. It was a drawing of the bookshop's front window, lovingly detailed, every book spine visible, the old hanging lamp perfectly rendered, even the rain streaks on the glass captured in careful pencil strokes. He flipped back a page and found more drawings. The lighthouse, the town square, the beach at sunset. Ginevra wasn't just a writer. She was an artist too. Each sketch held such care, such attention to beauty. Leon felt like he was seeing his town through new eyes, through her eyes. He should wait until tomorrow to return it. That would be proper. But the thought of Ginevra realizing she'd lost her notebook, of her worrying about it all night, made him uncomfortable. Besides, she'd mentioned her hotel. How many hotels could there be in their small town? Leon grabbed his coat and locked up the shop, his heart pounding with nervous energy. He was really doing this. He was chasing after a woman he'd just met, in the rain, to return a notebook. His grandmother would either be proud or amazed. Probably both. The streets were indeed soaked, puddles everywhere, the smell of rain and sea mixing in the cool air. Leon walked quickly toward the small hotel near the harbor, the only place that catered to tourists. His shoes squelched with each step, but he didn't care. He was halfway there when he saw her, Ginevra, standing under a street lamp, frantically checking her pockets and bag. Even from a distance, he could see the distress on her face. "Ginevra!" he called out. She spun around, and when she saw him running toward her, with the notebook held high, relief washed over her features. "Oh, thank God! I thought I'd lost it forever." Leon reached her, breathing hard from the run. "You left it at the shop. I didn't want you to worry." Ginevra took the notebook, clutching it to her chest like something precious. "You ran all the way here, in the wet streets, to return this?" "It seemed important," Leon said simply. For a moment, Ginevra just looked at him, and Leon wondered if he'd made a mistake, if this was too much, too forward. But then she laughed, that same musical laugh from earlier, and shook her head in disbelief. "You're soaking wet again," she observed. Leon looked down at himself. His coat was drenched, his pants splattered with puddle water, his hair dripping into his eyes. "I suppose I am." "There's a cafe that stays open late just down the street," Ginevra said. "The least I can do is buy you hot chocolate, to thank you for being my hero twice in one day." "Your hero? You saved me from the rain the first time, and now you've saved my notebook, which has 3 weeks of work in it." Ginevra linked her arm through his as naturally as if they'd known each other for years. Definitely hero material. The cafe was warm and smelled of cinnamon and coffee. They found a corner table, and the owner, old Signora Bianchi, who'd known Leon since he was a baby, brought them hot chocolate without being asked, shooting Leon a knowing wink that made his ears turn red. "She thinks we're on a date," Leon mumbled into his mug. Are we? Ginevra asked, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Leone nearly choked on his hot chocolate. That wasn't... I didn't assume. Relax. Leone. Ginevra reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. I'm teasing. Though if this were a date, it would be a very good one. They stayed at the cafe until Signora Bianchi started pointedly stacking chairs, a clear signal that closing time had arrived. Leone walked Ginevra to her hotel, and they stood outside under the stars that had emerged after the rain. Same time tomorrow? Ginevra asked. The shop opens at 9, Leone said. But you can come earlier if you want. I'm always there by 8. 8 o'clock then. Ginevra hesitated, then stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. So quickly he barely registered it before she was already pulling away. Good night, Leone Marchetti. Thank you for making my first real day in this town absolutely magical. She disappeared into the hotel before Leone could respond. He stood there on the empty street, his hand touching the spot where she'd kissed him, feeling like his entire world had shifted on its axis. Leone walked home slowly, taking the long way past the lighthouse, past the beach, past all the familiar landmarks of his small world. But everything looked different now, charged with new meaning. Ginevra had said she wanted to write about how places revealed themselves to people who listened. Leone had spent his whole life in this town, and he'd thought he knew every story it held. But tonight, standing under the stars with the taste of hot chocolate still on his lips, and the memory of Ginevra's laugh echoing in his ears, he realized the town had been waiting to reveal its greatest story yet. When Leone finally reached home, climbing the stairs to the apartment above the bookshop, he found his grandmother still awake, reading in her favorite chair. You're late, Nonna Rosa observed, looking at him over her glasses. And you're smiling like you found buried treasure. I met someone, Leone said, and even saying it out loud felt like admitting something monumental. I know. The whole town knows. Signora Bianchi already called me. Nonna Rosa marked her page and set down her book. A travel writer with beautiful eyes and a laugh that could wake the dead, according to the gossip. Leone felt his face heat up. The gossip is fast. The gossip is accurate, his grandmother replied. Is she special? Leone thought about Ginevra quoting Neruda, about her sketches that saw beauty in ordinary things, about the way she'd made him feel brave enough to talk about poetry and feelings. Yes, he said quietly. She's special. Nonna Rosa smiled, the kind of smile that held decades of wisdom. Good. It's about time something special happened to you, my dear boy. Just promise me one thing. What? Don't hide from this. I know you like to live in your books, in your safe little world. But some stories are meant to be lived, not just read. Promise me you'll be brave. Leone nodded, even though the thought terrified him. I'll try, Nonna. That night, Leone lay in bed unable to sleep, replaying every moment of the day. He thought about the rain, the poetry, the drawings, the hot chocolate, the kiss on his cheek. He thought about Ginevra's voice saying his name, about how she'd listened to his stories like they mattered. Somewhere in the dark hours before dawn, Leone got out of bed and went to his desk. He pulled out a notebook, not for bookshop records, but a personal journal he rarely used, and began to write. Not a list or an inventory or a sensible plan. Instead, he wrote poetry. Clumsy, honest poetry about rain and chance meetings and the terror of feeling your heart open after years of keeping it safely locked away. He wrote until his hand cramped, until the first light of dawn crept through his window. And when he finally stopped, He realized he'd filled 12 pages. 12 pages about a woman he'd known for less than a day, but who had somehow already changed everything. Leon set down his pen and watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. In a few hours, Ginevra would return to the bookshop. They would talk about legends and stories, but maybe they would also start writing their own. For the first time in years, Leon Marchetti wasn't afraid of what came next. He was only afraid of letting it pass him by. The next 2 weeks passed like a beautiful dream that Leon kept expecting to end. Every morning, Ginevra arrived at the bookshop at 8 o'clock sharp, 2 cups of coffee from the cafe down the street in her hands. She'd learned after that first day that Leon took his coffee black with 1 sugar, a detail he found absurdly touching that she'd remembered. They would sit in the reading corner while Leon organized new arrivals, and Ginevra would read her latest drafts aloud, asking his opinion on whether she'd captured the essence of the town properly. "Listen to this part," Ginevra would say, her eyes bright with excitement. I wrote, "The cobblestone streets remember every footstep, every love story, every goodbye. They've been worn smooth by generations of the same families, walking the same paths their grandparents walked, creating patterns of life that repeat like verses in a favorite song." "It's beautiful," Leon would reply, and he always meant it. Ginevra had a gift for seeing magic in ordinary things, for finding the poetry in daily life. But more than that, she made him feel like his opinions mattered, like his quiet observations about his town were valuable. They fell into a routine that felt as natural as breathing. Mornings at the bookshop, afternoons exploring. Leon became Ginevra's guide to all the hidden corners of the town. The secret beach only locals knew about, accessible only at low tide. The tiny chapel on the hill where wildflowers grew between ancient stones. Nor the family-owned gelato shop that had been making the same recipes since 1923. "Try the lemon basil," Leon suggested, one particularly warm afternoon, watching Ginevra deliberate over flavors like it was the most important decision of her life. "Lemon basil? That sounds weird," Ginevra said skeptically. "Trust me." She did, and the look of delighted surprise on her face made Leon's heart skip. "Oh my God, this is amazing. How did you know?" "I've lived here my whole life," Leon reminded her gently. "I know all the best secrets." "Then I'm lucky you're willing to share them with me," Ginevra said, linking her arm through his as they walked along the harbor. The gesture had become comfortable between them, this casual physical closeness that made Leon simultaneously nervous and thrilled. Yeah, they talked about everything. Ginevra shared stories from her travels, the time she got lost in a Moroccan market and was rescued by a kind grandmother who spoke no English but fed her the best tagine of her life. The week she spent in a Scottish village where everyone claimed to have seen the same ghost. The monastery in Greece where monks had been illuminating manuscripts for 600 years. In return, Leon shared his own stories, though they were smaller, more domestic. He told her about learning to read from his grandfather, about the regular customers who'd been coming to the bookshop for decades, about the summer he was 12 and tried to read every book in the shop alphabetically, but gave up at the letter F. "Why did you stop?" Ginevra asked. "I realized I was reading some books just to finish them, not because I loved them. My grandmother told me that life's too short to read books you don't love. That stuck with me." "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She is. She'd like you, I think." "You think?" Ginevra bumped her shoulder against his playfully. "Just think?" Leon gathered his courage. "She asked me yesterday if I was going to bring you to Sunday dinner." Ginevra stopped walking, turning to face him with surprise. She did. You don't have to, Leon said quickly, already regretting bringing it up. I know you're busy with your article and I'd love to come to Sunday dinner, Ginevra interrupted, her smile warm and genuine. I'd be honored to meet her. That Sunday, Leon spent 3 hours cleaning the apartment above the bookshop, changing his shirt 4 times, and nearly burning the focaccia he'd insisted on making himself. When Ginevra arrived, wearing a simple green dress with her hair pulled back, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers, Leon's grandmother took one look at them, standing awkwardly in the doorway, and started laughing. Oh, you two are adorable, Nonna Rosa declared, pulling Ginevra into a hug, before Leon could make proper introductions. Come in, come in. Leon has been nervous all day, like he's bringing home a princess. Nonna, Leone protested, his face burning. But Ginevra just laughed and handed over the flowers. Thank you for having me, Signora Marchetti. Your grandson has told me so much about you. And he's told me almost nothing about you, which tells me everything I need to know, the old woman replied with a knowing wink. When my Leon guards something close to his heart, that's when I know it's important. Dinner was a lively affair. Nonna Rosa was a masterful storyteller, regaling Ginevra with tales of the bookshop's history, of Leon as a shy child who would rather read than play with other children, of the town's evolution over her 80 years of life. But she also asked Ginevra thoughtful questions about her travels, her writing, her dreams. Don't you want to settle down eventually? Nonna Rosa asked over dessert, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp. Leon nearly choked on his wine. Nonna, that's personal. It's okay, Ginevra said softly. She set down her fork, considering the question carefully. I used to think settling down meant giving up adventure. But lately, I've been wondering if maybe I've had it backwards. Maybe the real adventure is building something lasting, creating a home, connecting deeply with a place instead of skimming the surface of 100 places. Nonna Rosa reached across the table and patted Ginevra's hand. That's a very wise thing for someone so young to realize. Some people never learn it. Later, as Leon walked Ginevra back to her hotel, through streets lit by old-fashioned lampposts, she was quieter than usual. Are you okay? Leon asked. I'm sorry if my grandmother was too direct. She doesn't believe in small talk. No, she was wonderful. She made me think, that's all. Ginevra stopped walking, turning to face him under a street lamp that cast golden light across her features. Leon, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever want to leave here? See the world? The question surprised him. Sometimes I think about it, but this place, it's in my blood, I think. Every street corner has a memory. Every building has a story. I wouldn't know who I was somewhere else, but you could learn. You could create new stories. Is that what you want? Leon's heart raced. To keep moving, keep traveling. I don't know anymore, Ginevra admitted. Before I came here, I would have said yes without hesitation. But now, she trailed off, looking up at the stars. Now I'm not sure what I want. They stood in silence for a moment, the night air cool and carrying the scent of jasmine from a nearby garden. Leon wanted to tell her to stay, wanted to confess that these past 2 weeks had been the happiest of his life, wanted to kiss her properly instead of just thinking about it constantly. But the words stuck in his throat and were heavy with risk. It's getting late, Ginevra finally said. I should go. Tomorrow? Leon asked, hating how desperate he sounded. Tomorrow, she confirmed, squeezing his hand before walking toward the hotel. The next day, Leon decided he couldn't keep living in this uncertain limbo. He would plan something special, something that would give him the courage to finally tell Ginevra how he felt. He spent the morning preparing, packing a picnic basket with all of Ginevra's favorite foods. The good cheese from Giuseppe's deli, fresh bread, olives, tomatoes from his grandmother's garden, and a bottle of local wine. When Ginevra arrived at the bookshop that afternoon, Leone was waiting with barely contained excitement. "I want to show you something," he said. "A place I've never shown anyone before. A secret place? From the keeper of all the town's secrets?" Ginevra's eyes lit up. "Lead the way." They walked to the edge of town, where the old castle ruins sat on a hill overlooking the sea. Most tourists visited the ruins, but Leone led Ginevra past the main structure to a hidden courtyard overgrown with flowering vines and wild herbs. From here, you could see the entire coastline, the town spread below like a painting, the lighthouse standing sentinel in the distance. "Leone, this is breathtaking," Ginevra breathed, spinning in a slow circle to take it all in. "My grandfather showed it to me when I was 10, Leone said, spreading out a blanket in the shade of an old stone wall. "He proposed to my grandmother here, actually. He said it was the most beautiful spot in the world, fitting for the most beautiful woman." They settled on the blanket, and Leone unpacked the picnic with shaking hands. This was it. This was the moment he'd been building toward. He had even written his feelings down, a poem he'd worked on for 3 nights, tucked in his pocket like a talisman. "There's something I want to give you," Leone started, reaching for the folded paper. But at that exact moment, Ginevra's phone rang. She grimaced apologetically. "I'm so sorry. It's my editor. I have to take this. Do you mind?" "No, of course not," Leone said, his hand falling away from his pocket. Ginevra stood and walked a few paces away, her voice shifting into professional mode. "Yes, hello, Marco. No, I know. I'm sorry it's taken longer than expected." Leone tried not to listen, focusing instead on arranging the food, but the courtyard's acoustics carried every word. "The article is almost done, yes. I've gathered so much material. The town is incredible. There's so much history and beauty here." A pause. "What? Oh. Yes, I know we discussed 3 weeks maximum. I understand that deadlines are important." Leone's hand stilled on the wine bottle. "No, you're right. I did say I'd have it submitted by the end of this month. Ginevra's voice dropped lower. "I know, Marco. I know this is my job. Yes, I got what I needed from this town. The research is complete. I'll be wrapping things up and leaving next week, as planned." The words hit Leone like physical blows. Leaving next week. Got what I needed from this town, as planned. His mind raced. Next week? She was leaving next week and hadn't mentioned it. And the way she'd said it. Got what I needed from this town. Like this place, like him, had just been material for her article. A job to complete and move on from. "I appreciate your patience, Marco. Yes, I'll send you the draft by Friday. Okay, bye." Ginevra returned to the blanket, tucking her phone away with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that. Work stuff. Now, what were you saying? You wanted to give me something?" Leone looked at her, really looked at her. She seemed the same as always, warm and genuine. But now he wondered if he'd been seeing what he wanted to see, instead of what was real. Had all of this been research, their conversations, their walks, the way she'd laughed at his stories and quoted poetry with him? Had it all been her gathering material? "Leone?" Ginevra touched his arm gently. "Are you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," Leone said automatically. I realized I forgot something at the shop. Something important." "Oh, do we need to go back?" "No, you should stay. Naz, enjoy the view. I just remembered I need to..." He stood abruptly, gathering his things. I have a shipment coming. I completely forgot. I need to be there to receive it. A shipment on Sunday? Ginevra asked, confusion clear in her voice. Special order. Very important books. Rare editions. The lies tasted bitter, but Leon couldn't stop them from spilling out. I'm sorry. I have to go. Leon, what's wrong? Did I do something? Nothing's wrong. I just need to take care of this. He was already backing away, unable to look at her properly. I'll see you later. But, Leon. He didn't turn around. He couldn't bear to see her face. Couldn't risk her seeing the hurt in his own eyes. Leon practically ran down the hill, his chest tight with a pain he'd never experienced before. It was his own fault, he told himself harshly. He'd let himself believe in something that was never real. Ginevra was a travel writer who collected stories from small towns. That's what she did. She'd never promised to stay. She'd never said she felt the same way he did. He'd built a fantasy in his head, and now reality was crushing it. For the next 3 days, Leon avoided the bookshop during the hours Ginevra usually visited. He left early in the morning and returned late at night, claiming to his confused grandmother that he had business to attend to in the neighboring town. He ignored Ginevra's calls and text messages, each one making him feel worse but unable to respond. What happened? Ginevra's first message had asked. Did I do something wrong? Please talk to me. Then, Leonie, I'm worried. Are you okay? Can we please meet? And finally, I don't understand what happened. I thought we were friends. At least tell me you're safe. Each message was a knife to his heart, but Leon couldn't bring himself to respond. What would he say? That he'd fallen for her like an idiot? That he'd actually believed she might feel the same way? That hearing her talk about leaving had shattered something in him he didn't know could break. On the 4th day, Leon was reorganizing the poetry section, his go-to task when he needed to think, when the bell above the door chimed. He turned, hoping it was anyone but her, and found Ginevra standing in the doorway. She looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed. Don't run away, please. I need to understand what happened. Leon set down the book in his hands with deliberate care. You're leaving next week. You said so on the phone. You heard that? Understanding dawned on Ginevra's face. Leon, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You came here to write an article. You got your information. Now you're leaving. That's how this works. Leon tried to keep his voice level. Professional. I understand. It's your job. Is that what you think? That this was all just research to me? Ginevra's voice rose with emotion. That you were just research? Weren't we? Isn't that what you said? I got what I needed from this town? Leon couldn't help the bitterness that crept into his tone. I'm sure your article will be very thorough. You collected a lot of good stories. Leon Marchetti, look at me. Ginevra crossed the shop to stand directly in front of him. Look at me and tell me you really believe that you think these past 2 weeks were just me doing my job. Leon forced himself to meet her eyes, to see the hurt and confusion there. Part of him wanted to take it all back, to apologize, to beg her to explain. But the larger part, the part that had been protecting his heart his whole life, couldn't let go of the pain. You're leaving, he said simply. That's all that matters. You were always going to leave. I told my editor I needed more time. That's what that phone call was about, Ginevra's voice cracked. He was upset because I was supposed to be done already, because I kept extending my stay. Because of you, Leon. Because I didn't want to leave. Then why did you say you'd be gone next week? Because he gave me an ultimatum. We either submit the article by the end of the month or lose the assignment entirely. Tears were streaming down Ginevra's face now. I panicked. I told him what he wanted to hear. But I've been trying to figure out how to stay, how to make this work. You should take the assignment, Leon interrupted, his own eyes burning. You shouldn't sacrifice your career for whatever this was. Whatever this was, Ginevra repeated, her voice small. Is that really all it was to you? Leon wanted to scream that no, it was everything. It was the most real thing he'd ever felt. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he said, You're a travel writer. You travel. That's who you are. I was foolish to think. He stopped himself. To think what? Ginevra pressed. Please, finish that sentence. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Why? The question burst out of Leon before he could stop it. Why does it matter? You're leaving anyway. In a week, or a month, or a year, you'll move on to the next town, the next story. That's your life, and this, he gestured around the bookshop, this is mine. We don't fit, Ginevra. We never did. The silence that followed was deafening. Ginevra stared at him, tears still falling, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. You're right. We don't fit. Because I was falling in love with someone I thought was brave enough to believe in possibility. But you're just a scared man hiding in his bookshop, too afraid to risk anything real. The words hit Leon like a slap. Ginevra turned and walked toward the door, but paused with her hand on the handle. For what it's worth, she said without turning around, I wasn't researching a story about the town. I was researching how to stay. I was looking into rental properties, trying to figure out if I could write freelance from here, instead of traveling. I even contacted the newspaper in the next town about a columnist position, because somewhere in the last 2 weeks, I stopped thinking about my next destination and started thinking about building a home. Here, with you. She opened the door, and the bell chimed its cheerful sound, incongruous with the moment. But you're right about one thing, Ginevra continued. I do travel. I go to places, and I find their stories. And every single place I've ever been, I've left a piece of my heart. I thought maybe, finally, I'd found the place where I could keep my heart whole. I guess I was wrong. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Leon stood frozen, her words echoing in his mind. She'd been planning to stay. She'd been researching how to stay. She'd been falling in love with him. And he'd thrown it all away because he was terrified of getting hurt. Well, came his grandmother's voice from the back of the shop, making Leon jump. That was the most idiotic thing I've ever witnessed, and I lived through the war. Nonna, I didn't know you were here. Of course I was here. I'm always here. She emerged from the back room, shaking her head in disappointment. That girl just told you she was falling in love with you, that she was trying to stay for you, and you let her walk out that door. She's leaving anyway, Leon said weakly. She said so. She said her editor was pressuring her, you foolish boy. She was asking for help, for support, for you to fight for her. Nonna Rosa grabbed Leon by the shoulders. Do you love her? Leon's voice broke. Yes. God help me. Yes. Then why are you standing here? Why aren't you running after her? Because I'm afraid. The admission burst out of Leon like a dam breaking. I'm afraid that I'm not enough, that this town isn't enough, that eventually she'll wake up and realize she gave up her whole life for someone boring who's never left his hometown, and she'll resent me for it. His grandmother's expression softened. Oh, my dear boy, love is always a risk. But you know what's more frightening than loving and losing? Never loving at all. Living your whole life is safe and small and alone, wondering what if. Leon thought about the past 2 weeks, the conversations, the laughter, the way Ginevra saw beauty in his ordinary life, the poetry they'd shared, the stories, the comfortable silences, the way his heart had felt full for the first time in years. "I ruined it," he whispered. "Did you hear what I said to her?" "I heard. And yes, you were cruel. But you were cruel because you were hurt and scared, and that girl knows it." Nonna Rosa cupped his face in her weathered hands. "The question is, are you brave enough to apologize? To fight for what you want?" Leon thought about what Ginevra had said, that she thought he was brave enough to believe in possibility. He'd disappointed her. He'd proven her wrong. But maybe he could prove himself wrong instead. "What do I do?" he asked his grandmother. She smiled. "Oh, you find her. You tell her the truth. And you show her that love isn't about fitting together perfectly. It's about choosing to make it work, even when it's scary." Leon grabbed his jacket and ran. The hotel receptionist told Leon that Ginevra had checked out that morning. She left. Leon's heart sank. But her reservation was until the end of the month. "She changed it, sir. Pay the cancellation fee and everything." The receptionist, a young woman who'd gone to school with Leone, gave him a sympathetic look. She seemed upset. Asked about the earliest ferry to the mainland. "When is the earliest ferry?" 7 tomorrow morning." Leon checked his watch. It was already past 6 in the evening. He had less than 13 hours to find Ginevra and somehow fix the disaster he'd created. But where would she have gone? Not back to the hotel. Maybe the beach? The cafe? The lighthouse? He spent the next 4 hours searching every place they'd visited together. The gelato shop was closed. The secret beach was empty. The chapel on the hill held nothing but wildflowers and wind. As the night deepened and his hope faded, Leon found himself walking back to the bookshop, defeated. That's when he saw the light. The bookshop should have been dark. He'd locked it when he left, but warm light glowed from the windows, and when Leon tried the door, it swung open. Inside, sitting in the reading chair with a book of Neruda's poetry, was Ginevra. "How did you—" "Your grandmother let me in," Ginevra said quietly, not looking up from the book. "She said I could wait here, that you'd be back eventually." Leon's throat tightened. "I've been looking everywhere for you." "I know. I saw you from the window of the cafe. You passed by 3 times. Finally, she looked up at him, her eyes still red but dry now. "I kept hoping you'd look in, but you never did." "I didn't think—" Leon stopped, crossed the room, and knelt beside her chair. "I'm so sorry, Ginevra. I'm sorry for what I said, for how I made you feel, for being a coward. Why didn't you just tell me you'd heard the phone call? Why did you let me think you were angry about something else?" Leon took a shaky breath. "Because hearing you say you were leaving next week felt like confirmation of everything I was afraid of. That this us was temporary. That I was temporary. I've spent my whole life in this town, Ginevra. I've never been special, never been someone worth staying for. And when I started falling for you, when I started hoping that maybe you felt the same way, it terrified me. Because how could someone like you choose someone like me? Someone like you?" Ginevra set down the book and leaned forward. "Leon, do you know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who knows the stories behind every book in this shop. Someone who quotes poetry, like breathing. Someone who ran through the rain to return my notebook. Who shared his secret places with me. Who makes his grandmother's recipes just to see me smile." I see someone who made me want to stop running for the first time in my life. But your career is just a job, Leon. A job I chose because I was running from something I didn't even realize I was running from. Ginevra reached out and took his hand. I've been traveling for 5 years, writing about beautiful places and interesting people. And do you know what I realized while sitting in this chair waiting for you? I've been searching for home, for belonging, for someone who sees me as more than the woman passing through. And I found it here. I found it with you. But what about your editor? The deadline? Ginevra laughed, a sound caught between tears and joy. I called him this afternoon. I quit. Leon's eyes widened. You what? I quit my job. Well, not completely. I negotiated to become a freelance contributor instead of staff, which means I can write from anywhere. She squeezed his hand. Including a small coastal town with a bookshop and a man I'm falling in love with. You can't give up everything for me, Leon protested, even as hope bloomed in his chest. What if we don't work out? What if I regret it? What if? What if? What if? Ginevra interrupted gently. Leon, life is full of what ifs. But here's what I know for certain. I know that when I'm with you, I feel more at home than I've felt anywhere. I know that you see me, really see me. Not just the adventurous travel writer persona, but the woman who sometimes gets lonely, who collects stories because she's afraid of writing her own, who wants to build something real. She stood, pulling Leon to his feet, and reached into her bag. She pulled out her leather notebook and opened it to a page near the end. Look at this. Leon looked down at the page and felt his breath catch. It was covered in sketches, all of him. Leon reading at the bookshop counter. Leon laughing at the beach. Leon gesturing animatedly while explaining some story, sur page after page of drawings, each one capturing moments he hadn't even realized she'd been observing. I don't draw places I'm going to leave, Ginevra said softly. I draw places I want to remember forever. People I never want to forget. And I have 20 pages of you, Leon Marchetti. Leon felt tears prickling his eyes. I don't deserve this. I said awful things to you. You were scared. I understand being scared. Ginevra closed the notebook and set it aside. But here's my question. Are you still scared? Leon considered lying, considered pretending to be braver than he was. But Ginevra deserved honesty. Yes, he admitted. I'm terrified. I've never felt this way about anyone. And the thought of losing you, of messing this up, it makes my heart race in the worst way. Good, Ginevra said, surprising him. I'm terrified too. I'm scared that I'm making a huge mistake, that I'm giving up my safety net, that maybe I'm just caught up in the romance of this town and in 3 months I'll wake up and wonder what I was thinking. She stepped closer until they were barely a hand's breadth apart. But I'm more scared of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. So I'm choosing to be brave. The question is, will you choose it with me? Leon looked into her eyes and saw his own fear reflected back at him, but also hope and determination and something deeper, something that looked like love. I have something for you, he said suddenly. Wait here. He ran upstairs to his apartment, taking the steps 2 at a time. In his room, he grabbed the project he'd been working on for the past week, the one he'd planned to give her at the castle ruins before everything fell apart. When he returned, breathless, he handed Ginevra a handmade book. It wasn't professionally bound. The stitching was uneven, and the cover was simple cloth. But every page had been crafted with care. What is this? Ginevra asked, running her fingers over the cover. Open it. She did, and her eyes widened. The first page held a pressed flower, a violet from the first day they met, when she'd waited out the rain in his shop. The second page had the wrapper from the lemon basil gelato. The third held a photo Nonna Rosa had sneakily taken of them at Sunday dinner, heads bent together over a book, both smiling. Page by page, Leon had documented their time together. Ticket stubs from the museum they'd visited, a leaf from the Wildflower Chapel, a napkin from Signora Bianchi's cafe with her knowing wink sketched on it in Leon's careful hand. And between each memento, Leon had written poems. Ginevra read them aloud, her voice breaking. She came in from the rain, and everything changed. The books whispered secrets they'd kept for years. The dust motes danced in sunlight that had forgotten how to shine. She came in from the rain, and I forgot how to be afraid. Another page. I have lived in stories, safe between pages, where hearts break beautifully and love is always simple. But you taught me that real life is messier and more magnificent, that actual heartbeats are better than metaphors, that choosing love is braver than reading about it. And on the final page, in Leonie's neatest handwriting, you make me want to be brave enough for this, for us, for a story we write together. Please stay. Please choose this small town and this ordinary man and this extraordinary feeling. I love you, Ginevra. I don't know when it happened, maybe the first day, maybe gradually, maybe all at once, but I love you. And if you'll let me, I'll spend every day proving that choosing to stay was the greatest adventure you could have chosen. By the time Ginevra finished reading, tears were streaming down her face. She looked up at Leone, clutching the book to her chest. When did you make this? I started it after our third day together, Leone admitted. I wanted to remember everything, even if you left. I thought if I wrote it down, made it permanent, then even when you were gone, I'd have proof that it was real, that you were real. Leone, Ginevra whispered, I'm not going anywhere. Are you sure? Because I need you to be sure. I need you to know that this town is small and sometimes boring, and everyone knows everyone's business. I need you to know that I'm not exciting or adventurous. I like quiet mornings and organizing books and the same cafe every day. Ginevra stopped him by pressing her fingers gently to his lips. I know all of that. And I love all of that. Don't you understand? I've had adventure. I've had excitement and new places and constant change. What I've never had is this feeling of coming home, of being seen and known and chosen anyway. Leon reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. You're sure? I'm sure, Ginevra said firmly. Then with a small smile, though I should warn you, I'm probably going to drive you crazy. I leave coffee cups everywhere, and I hate organizing things alphabetically, and I'll want to rearrange your book displays to be more aesthetically pleasing. Leon kissed her. It was gentle and tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But when Ginevra melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, the kiss deepened into something more certain, something that felt like a promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Ginevra laughed. How long have you been wanting to do that? Since the first day, Leon admitted. Since you stood in my doorway, dripping wet and demanding books about lighthouses. Then we've wasted a lot of time. We have the rest of our lives to make up for it, Leone said, then froze. I mean, that's not... I wasn't assuming... Ginevra kissed him again, softer this time. The rest of our lives sounds perfect." They stayed in the bookshop until dawn, talking and planning and occasionally kissing. Ginevra told Leon about her ideas for freelance work, about potentially teaching writing workshops in town, about wanting to help with the bookshop. Leone told her about his dream of hosting poetry readings and author events, about expanding the rare book section, about all the ideas he'd been too scared to try alone. "We could do it together," Ginevra said, her eyes bright with possibility. "The bookshop, the events, all of it. You'd want that? To be tied down to one place, one business?" "I'd want to build something meaningful with someone I love," Ginevra corrected. "That's not being tied down. That's choosing to put down roots." As the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, so they stood at the bookshop window watching the town wake up. Leon wrapped his arms around Ginevra from behind, and she leaned back against him with a contented sigh. "Do you remember what you said that first day?" Leon asked. "About places revealing themselves to people who listen?" "I remember. I think people are like that too. You saw things in me I didn't even know were there. You made me want to be braver, to believe in possibility." Ginevra turned in his arms to face him. "You did the same for me. You showed me that the greatest stories aren't always the ones we travel across the world to find. Sometimes they're the ones we build, day by day, with someone who makes us want to stay." "I love you," Leon said, and this time the words came easily. "I love you too," Ginevra replied, "now and for all the days to come." They kissed as the sun fully rose, the bookshop coming alive with golden light, and in that moment, Leone understood what his grandmother had meant. Love was always a risk, but the greatest risk of all was never loving at all. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Leon and Ginevra stood behind the bookshop counter together. They'd repainted the shop's exterior, added a cafe corner that served Signora Bianchi's hot chocolate recipe, and installed new shelves for Ginevra's curated section of travel writing. Above the door hung a new sign, Marchetti and Rossi Books, where stories come home. "We have our first event tonight," Ginevra reminded Leon, organizing the chairs they'd set up for the poetry reading. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," Leon admitted. "What if no one comes?" "Then it'll be you, me, and Nonna Rosa, and we'll have a lovely time reading poetry to each other." But people did come. The shop filled with locals and a few tourists who'd read Ginevra's glowing article about the town. Leon read his poems, the ones about rain and chance meetings and finding courage, and the audience listened with rapt attention. After the reading, as people browsed the books and sipped hot chocolate, Ginevra found Leon in the back, looking stunned. "They liked it," he said, almost disbelieving. "They really liked it." "Of course they did. You're talented, Leon. I've been telling you that for months." "I know, but hearing other people say it—" He shook his head in wonder. "This is because of you. All of this. You made me believe I could do this." "We did this together," Ginevra corrected, he taking his hand. "That's how it works now. Together." Leon pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Together," he agreed. That night, after everyone had left, and they'd cleaned up the shop, Leon and Ginevra sat in their favorite reading corner. Ginevra was working on her next article, a piece about small business owners revitalizing old traditions. Leone was reading through submissions for their next poetry event. "Do you ever miss it?" Leon asked suddenly. "The traveling, the adventure, the constant newness?" Ginevra looked up from her laptop and smiled. "Sometimes I think about it, but then I look around at what we've built, this bookshop, these events, this community, and I realize I'm having the greatest adventure of my life. It's just a different kind of adventure. No regrets. Not a single one. Ginevra closed her laptop and moved to sit in Leon's lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. I found my home, Leon, in this town, in this bookshop, with you. That's worth more than any amount of stamps in a passport. Leon held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. He thought about the shy, scared man he'd been 6 months ago, hiding behind books and poetry, afraid to risk his heart. That man still existed in some ways. Leon still loved quiet mornings and organizing books. He still got nervous around crowds and sometimes needed time alone to recharge. But now he had someone who understood those things, who loved them about him, who created space for both his stillness and his growth. "What are you thinking about?" Ginevra asked, tracing patterns on the back of his neck. "About how you came in from the rain and changed everything," Leon said. "About how the best stories are the ones we live, not just the ones we read." "Spoken like a true romantic," Ginevra teased gently. "You made me one," Leon replied. "Before you, I only knew how to love stories. You taught me how to love my own life." They sat together in comfortable silence, surrounded by books and possibility. Two people who'd found in each other exactly what they'd been searching for, even when they hadn't known they were searching at all. Outside, the town settled into evening. The lighthouse began its nightly rotation, its beams sweeping across the sea. The stars emerged, one by one, mapping the sky with ancient light. And in the bookshop on the corner, where generations of stories had been told and sold, a new story was being written, one of love and courage, of choosing to stay, of finding home in another person's heart. It was, Leon thought as he held Ginevra close, the best story he'd ever been part of. And this time, he wasn't just reading it, he was living it. Together, they were writing it, day by day, word by word, heartbeat by heartbeat. Did Leon and Ginevra's love story warm your heart? Share this tale with someone who believes in second chances and the courage to choose love. Drop a comment below, telling us your favorite moment from their journey. Was it the rainy first meeting, the heartbreaking misunderstanding, or the beautiful reunion? Subscribe for more heartwarming romance stories that prove love is worth the risk.